November 4th or December 4th, 2025. Chapter 7, 7.3. Continue reading part number 3. Attributes of an arahat. This is point A. Physical self-mastery of bhāvita-kāya. This is mastery of kāya is the body. And bhāvita, basically the mastery of an adept of the body. So here we go. Although there are many passages in the Tipitaka in which Gautama Buddha mentions the term bhāvita-kāya, there are no explicit explanation of this term, as if the listeners always understood its meaning. There was occasions, however, when non-Buddhists, especially members of the Nikanda order. No, it is noteworthy to know that during Gautama Buddha's time, there were a lot of scholars in society those days. And the Nikka order was an order of the Jain system, or the Jain system. These were naked ascetics, practicing extreme asceticism, who the founder would be Mahavir, the 24th, Tirthankara. So it's good to know. Now, they argued, the argument was that the misguided attempt to annihilate past karma through pain and austerity. So when you look at these days, most of the time we see pictures of Gautama Buddha in a robe, and then we see another statue or picture. It's a Jainism, which is, it's not a Buddha, but it's a naked ascetic. And the difference is you'll usually see a mark on the chest, in the middle of the chest. Anyhow, so it's good to note this. So there was an occasion when non-Buddhists, especially members of the Nikanda order of Jainism, spoke about the subject according to their own understanding, and Gautama Buddha duly responded. In the Mahasakkacha Sutta, for example, contains an account of such conversations in which terms bhāvita-kāya and bhāvita-citta are discussed. One morning, the famous Nikanda clan member named Sakchaka, he was a teacher of one of the Lichavi princes in Vaji, traveled to where Gautama Buddha was staying and engaged him in a conversation. He began by speaking about physical cultivation, kāya-bhāvanā, and then mental cultivation, citta-bhāvanā. He told Gautama Buddha that according to his own opinion, that the Gautama's disciples only strive in the area of mental cultivation, but they do not engage in physical cultivation. The commentary states that the reason Sakchaka held this view is that he observed that the bhikkhus, the monks, going off in search of seclusion, but they did not practice severe austerities. After he had stated his opinion, Gautama Buddha replied by asking him what, according to his learning, is the meaning of physical cultivation, kāya-bhāvanā. Sakkacha answered by defining it as a practice of severe austerities and self-mortification, atta, kalamata-nu-yoga. It's good to note that yoga in those terms is classified as meditation, not as the simple yoga of what the Westerners or the modern terms of yoga people understand. Gautama Buddha went on to ask him about the understanding of mental cultivation, bhāvita-kāya. Yet Sakaka was unable to provide an explanation. Gautama Buddha continued by saying that Sakaka's understanding of physical cultivation is incomparable with the cultivation as found in the Noble One's disciples, Arya Vinaya. Failing to understand the meaning of physical cultivation, how could one possibly understand mental cultivation? He then bids Sakaka to listen to his explanation on what is not physical and mental cultivation, and conversely, what is truly physical and mental cultivation. How Agivesana has one gained mastery in body and mastery in mind. Here pleasant feelings arises in well-thought noble disciple. Although touched by that pleasant feeling, vedana, he does not lust after pleasure. He does not become one who lusts after pleasant feeling. That pleasant feeling of his ceases. With nirodha, the cessation of pleasant feeling, vedana, painful feelings arises. Touched by that painful feeling, he does not sorrow, he does not lament, he does not have disdain, he does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. In this way, agivesana, although that pleasant feeling has arisen in him, it does not invade his mind and remain, because the body is developed. And although that painful feeling has arisen in him, it does not invade his mind and remain, because the mind is developed. Look here, agivesana, any noble disciple in whom, in this double manner, arisen pleasant feeling does not invade his mind. And remain, because of the body is developed. Arisen painful feeling does not invade his mind. Remain, because the mind is developed. Has gained mastery in body and in mind. As mentioned above, the principal meaning of physical cultivation, kāya-bhāvanā, is the development of the collection of the 5 doorways. Kāya, that is, the 5 faculties, indriya, the faculties of the eye, the faculties of the ear, the faculties of the nose, the faculty of the tongue, and the faculty of the body. Therefore, physical cultivation, kāya-bhāvanā, is essentially identical to the cultivation of these sense faculties, indriya-bhāvanā. The development of the same faculties begins with sense restraint, indriya-sambara, to which Gautama Buddha gave great emphasis in the training for those who have gone forth as a monk. In the Dhamma sense restraint is a fundamental practice linked with the training in virtuous conduct of sila. In the commentaries, sense restraint is it's often classified as forms of virtuous conduct, as virtue as sense restraint, indriya sambara sila. Let us have a look at this basic principle. And how, sire, is a monk called the guardian of those sense doors? Here, a monk, seeing the physical object with the eye, does not grasp, cling, long for it as the major signs or secondary characteristics. Because the evil, unwholesome akusala states of covetousness, abhijja, and the indignation, domanassa, would overwhelm him if he dwelt, leaving the eye faculty unrestrained, So he practicing his guarding it. He protects the eye faculty, develops restraints of eye faculty, on hearing a sound with the ear, or smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on feeling a tangible object with the body, on knowing a mind object with the mind. He does not grasp at its major signs or secondary characteristics. He develops restraint of the mind faculty. That monk endowed with this noble sense restraint experiences within himself pure, unadulterated happiness. In this way, sire, a monk is guarded from these sense doors. Sense restraint still belongs to the practice of a trainee, or it is rudimentary of stage of practice, samnyak. It is not necessary to practice for an arahat who has gained mastery over the sense faculty, bhāvitindriya, which is classified as a part of bhāvita-kāya. It is included in the discussion here, however, to demonstrate various stages of practice. There is a more profound form of sense restraint, or another way of explaining this term, as is evident from the discussion Gautama Buddha had the wanderer Kundariya at Anjavara in Saketa. The cultivation of these forms of sense restraints fulfills the three kinds of good conduct. Sucharita, the cultivations of the three kinds of good conduct, fulfills the four foundation of mindfulness. The cultivation of the four foundation of mindfulness fulfills the 7 factors of enlightenment. The cultivation of 7 factors of enlightenment fulfills the true knowledge and deliverance, the highest blessings. Now, and how Kundali is restraints of the sense faculties develops and cultivated so that it fulfills the 3 kinds of good conduct. Here, Kundali, having seen an agreeable form with the eye, a monk does not long for it, or becomes excited by it, or generate lust for it. His body is steady, his mind is steady, inwardly well composed, well liberated. However, having seen a disagreeable form with the eye, he is not dismayed by it, not restrained, not resistant, not afflicted, not resentful. His body is steady, his mind is steady, inwardly well composed, well liberated. Further, having heard an agreeable sound with the ear, having smelt an agreeable odor with the nose, having savored an agreeable taste with the tongue, having felt an agreeable tangible with the body, having cognized an agreeable mental phenomenon with the mind, a monk does not long for it. His mind is steady, inwardly well composed, well liberated. In this way, Kundaliya is restraint of the sense faculties, indriya kāya, developed and cultivated so that it fulfills the 3 kinds of good conduct. Now, there are descriptions of how guarding the doorways of cognitions are included in practice, leading to the stage of a noble path and the fruit. Now let us examine the higher stage of practice, the cultivation of the sense faculties, bhāvitindriya, which is described in Indriya-bhāvanā Sutra. After describing this form of practice, the sutra always distinguishes between the term Seka Patipata, Seka Patipata, referring to the awakened person who is still a trainee. Sika Patipat. The term bhāvitindriya referring to an arahat who has completed his or her spiritual training and is fully developed in body, bhāvita-kāya. So one who is already extinguish all the defilements of mind, body, and speech, the term would be bhāvitindriya. The one that is still in training would be sikha patipada. On one occasion, Gautama Buddha was staying at the bamboo grove in Kakunchala, India, or Bharat. He was visited by Uttarara, a disciple of the Brahmin Parasarākāya, or another author spelling is Parasiriya. The Buddha asked him for whether Parasariya taught the cultivation of sense faculties, kāya-bhāvanā, to his disciples. When Uttara replied that he did, Gautama Buddha asked him, in what manner does he teach the developing the sense faculties? Uttara replied that he teaches to avoid having the eye see material forms, having the ear hear sounds. Gautama Buddha answered the following this line: by reasoning, a blind or a deaf person has mastered the sense faculties. Gautama Buddha went on to say that the development of the senses are taught by Parasariya is different from the supreme cultivation of senses in the discipline of the noble ones, Arya Vinaya. Venerable Ananda then asked Gautama Buddha to explain this supreme cultivation of the senses. The cultivation of the sense faculties, kāya-bhāvanā. Now, Ananda, how is there the supreme development of these faculties in the Noble One's disciple? Here, Ananda, when a bhikkhu sees form with the eye, there arises in him what is agreeable. There arises in him what is disagreeable. There arises in both agreeable and disagreeable. He clearly understands thus. Thus has risen in me what is agreeable. There has arisen what is disagreeable. And what is arisen in me that is both agreeable and disagreeable. But that is conditioned, dependently arisen. This is peaceful. This is sublime. This is equanimity. The agreeable that arose, the discernible that arose, and both agreeable and discernible or disagreeable that arose, cease in him with equanimity. It's well established. Just as a man with good sight, having opened his eyes, might shut them, or having shut his eyes, might open them, so too a monk with the agreeable that arose and disagreeable that arose, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose, ceases, and equanimity is established, just as quickly, just as rapidly, just as easily. This is called the Noble One's disciples, the supreme development of the faculties regarding forms cognized by the eye. Again, Ananda, when a monk hears the sound in the ear, smells an odor with the nose, tastes flavor with the tongue, touches a tangible with the body, cognizes mind objects with the mind, equanimity is well established. Just as if a man were to let 2 or 3 drops of water fall onto an iron frying pan, heated for a whole day, the falling of the drops might be slow, but they would quickly vaporize and vanish. So too in a monk, the agreeable that arose, the disagreeable that arose, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose ceases, and equanimity is established just as quickly, just as rapidly, just as easily. This is called the Noble One's disciple, the supreme development of the sense faculties regarding mind objects cognized by the mind. This is how there is the supreme development of the faculties of the Noble One's disciples. One who is still in training, a sikha patipada. And how, Ananda, is one disciple in higher training, one who is still engaged in practice? Here, Ananda, when a bhikkhu sees a form with the eye, there arises him agreeable and arises disagreeable, that arises both agreeable and disagreeable. he is discomforted, disquieted, disgusted by agreeable that arose, by the disagreeable that arose, and by both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in him. When a monk hears a sound with the ear, smells odor with the nose, tastes flavor with the tongue, touches the tangible with the body, cognizes the mind object with the mind, he is discomforted, disquieted, disgusted by the agreeable that arose, by the disagreeable that arose, and by both agreeable and disagreeable that arose. That is how one is a disciple in higher training, one who is still engaged in practice. One who has completed the training, bhāvitindriya, and how Ananta is one noble and fully developed faculties. Here Ananta, when a monk sees a form with the eye and arises in him what is agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable, if he should wish, may I abide perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive, he abides. Perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive. If he should wish, may I abide perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive, he abides. Perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. If he should wish, may I abide perceiving the unrepulsive in what both repulsive and unrepulsive, he abides. Perceiving the unrepulsive in that. If he should wish, may I abide perceiving the repulsive in what is both unrepulsive and repulsive, he abides, perceiving the repulsive in that. If he should wish, may I avoid both the repulsive and the unrepulsive, abide in equanimity, mindful, fully aware. He abides in equanimity towards that, mindful and fully aware. And Ananda, when a monk hears a sound and with the ear smells and odor with the nose, tastes flavor with the tongue, touches the tangible with the body, cognizes the mind with the mind, there arises in him what is agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable. If he should wish, may I avoid both the repulsive and the unrepulsive, abide in equanimity, mindful and fully aware. He abides in equanimity towards that, mindful and fully aware. That is how one is noble, one fully developed faculties. Now, as I mentioned earlier in explaining, by expanding on their teachings or by clinging, by changing the focus on the investigation, there are alternate definitions for terms of kāya-bhāvanā and bhāvita-kāya. Instead of focusing on the doorways of cognition or the sense faculties, the focus shifts to the world at large or to the external objects which comes into contact with the senses. The objects of cognition. One then distinguishes between the various sense objects. By doing this, the definition of physical development becomes the development of one's relationship to one's surroundings by way of one's physical body, or by the development of one's relationship to the material things, including other human beings, and in their capacity as objects of cognition. One group of objects that people engage with a great degree is that of collection of the four requisites, paccaya. Food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. By extension, this group also includes all the other material things, consumable objects, tools, appliances used in work, etc., which comprises a large part of our interaction with the outside world. This area of a person's life requires discipline and training, as one can see from the teaching on moral conduct, comprised of wise use of the four requisites, paccaya pati sevana sila. A wise use of material requisites like sense restraint may thus be included in the factor of physical development, kāya-bhāvanā. In the Dhamma-Vinaya, the relationship to the material things that nourish and sustain life is considered an essential part of the training. People are able to develop this relationship constantly in everyday life. This form of training is set down from the onset of those individuals ordained as monks and nuns, of reflecting wisely on the use of the four requisites, and by developing a sense of moderation, which leads to contentment and generates true blessing. This stands in contrast to consume things, with only a foggy understanding and seeking to gratify one's craving. Chanda, I do not teach you the Dhamma for restraining the asavas that arise in the present alone, nor do I teach the Dhamma merely for preventing asavas from arising in the future. Rather, I teach the Dhamma in both restraint, present asavas, and to prevent future asavas from arising. Therefore, Chanda, let the robe I have allowed you to simply for the protection of the cold, for the protection from heat, for the protection of contact from the wind, sun, horseflies, mosquitoes, creeping things, and only for the purpose of concealing the private parts and protecting your modesty. Let the alms food I have allowed you to be just enough for the support of the substance for the holy life, for avoiding malnutrition leading to distress, and for the assisting of the holy life. Considering thus I should terminate old feelings without arising new feelings, that I should be healthy and blameless and shall live in comfort. Let the lodging I have allowed you by simply for the protection of cold, for the protection from heat, for the protection from contact from the wind, sun, from horseflies, mosquitoes, creeping things, and only for the purpose for allaying the perils of climate and for the enjoyment of seclusion. Let the medicinal requisites that I have allowed you just to be for the warding off of feelings that have arisen resulting from illness, and for the benefit for being free from afflicting disease. In either Thai or Lao, this is called Bhajai, the four requisites. Of the four requisites, lodging, sena sana, literally place for sitting and lying down, is highly sufficient, both as a residence and a place for storing the other requisites. Most human actions, whether it be preparation, consumption, or storage of food, or the place for keeping one's clothing and getting dressed, occur in one's lodging or abode. In respect to the offering gifts, Gautama Buddha said, given food and drink, one gives strength. Giving clothes, one gives beauty. Giving a vehicle, one gives ease and comfort. Giving a lamp, one gives sight. The one who gives a residence in the giver at all, but the one who teaches the Dhamma is the giver of the deathless. For the monatistic community, the resident encompassing all buildings from personal monatistic kuti to communal buildings like the Simha or the Sala, which comprise individual monasteries originally referred to by Gautama Buddha as arahants, park or grove. These monasteries developed from the forest areas, from woodlands, and from royal parks. The first Buddhist monastery offered by King Bimbasara to the Gautama Buddha was Velavanam, the bamboo grove with the royal park. The monastery in which Gautama Buddha spent the most amount of his time was in Jetavana Royal Park, later called Jetavana Grove. From monasteries in smaller woodlands to the outskirts of towns and villages, or those bordering larger forests, the meanings of monastic residence was expanded to incorporate places deep in the forest, including caves, steep ravines, and mountains. Eventually, the concept of residence, senasana, for the monastic community became to encompass the entire range of the forest, mountains, and inhabited areas, until it met one's entire environment, the whole world. One's residence, region of habitation, and the entire environment of equivalent to those things in one's surroundings with which one comes into contact, associates, engages, and relates by way of the five senses. Therefore, the world around us is the domain for physical development. Kāya-bhāvanā. for training the body, for training one's interaction with the outside world by way of the sense faculties. A favorable relationship to one's residence, which is maintained continuously by accomplished practitioners, is evidenced by the terms used to describe monatistic residence above, and is connected to the healthy relationship generally in a spiritual practice to the world at large. This is evident from the first term used to describe the monastery, arahants, which can be translated as park. Its literal means a place of delight. This term arahants points to the fundamental aspects of Dhamma practitioners' relationship to the world. Beginning with the person's residence, in the case of monks and nuns, this refers to a monastery as being a place inspiring delight. For example, it is a natural surrounding with plants and animals. This term reveals the desirable mind state a monatistic or Dhamma practitioner should maintain in relation to a suitable residence, which can be extended to any place or region where one lives, making it a place of delight. This is not all. The term arahants connects people to the fundamental state of existence by way of practice. It connects us to the domains of sense experience, to the mind. Here, one's abode or abiding is one of delight, which one reveals with various Dhamma principles. For example, solitude at a place of delight, bhāvita-kāya, seclusion as a place of delight, patisalana, the relinquishing unwholesome qualities in the life of abiding, pahana, and the cultivation of wholesome qualities as delight abiding, bhāvana. There are also places of delight that should be avoided. For example, sleep in places of delight, nitārama, busyness at a place of delight, kamārama, talking and chatting at a place of delight, basararama, socializing and mingling at a place of delight, sanghanikārama, or visual images and sound as a place of delight, ruparama, or satarama. A rama here refers to the favorable feeling or an attitude towards suitable objects which one connects into contact. It is as if Dhamma practitioners have the responsibility to make those things they engage with the source of delight. Being with one's lodging or residence, which is for monks, is already called arahants, and then extending to the feeling outward to their general environment. In reference to people's relationship to their abodes and surrounding environment, besides the term arahants, another term used probably more often than arahants, that is often used in the context of lives of monks, Dhamma practitioners and arahants, is ramaniya, translated as delightful, refreshing, and present. This term points to an inspiring surrounding of the atmosphere, which is extremely favorable for practitioners and conducive to the development of wholesome mind states. For an arahant, accessing this delightful atmosphere is easy and happens readily because their contact with the world occurs without any hidden defilements. Moreover, arahants are able to make their surrounding delightful and refreshing, both for themselves and both for those who dwell close to them. The term ramaniya appears frequently in the Tipitaka, and it is as if this atmosphere of delight or refreshment is the feature of the Tipitaka itself. We see it expressed, for example, already in the story of Gautama Buddha's life before he was an awakened. When Gautama Buddha was a bodhisattva, he went in search of a suitable place to practice meditation, and finally found such a location at Uravela. This is a truly delightful piece of ground with sheltered, pleasant groves and a clear flowing river with smooth banks. Nearby a village for alms resort. This will indeed serve for the striving of a clansman intent on striving. And I sat down there thinking, this will I serve for striving. Ramani Yovata. There are records of Gautama Buddhas and his disciple when they stayed or passed through various places, especially forests and mountains, describing these places as delightful. Sometimes these descriptions are detailed in the case of Venerable Ika Viharaya Thera, who described in the verse his place of solitude. While a refreshing breeze blows, laden with the fragrance of flowers, I'll burst asunder ignorance while seated on the mountaintop. In the mountain heights, carpet with flowers, a regions of cool forest, gladdened by a joy of release, I will delight in the great mountain caves. When Venerable Mahakassapa returned from collecting alms and climbed into the mountains, he uttered a long verse praising the beauty of the forest landscape, including these passages. Garlanded with a sacred pair, echoing with the trumpet calls of elephants, these uplifting crags are places of delight. These mountains do me pleasure, please me so. Dark-hued like thunderheads, these marvelous mountains with cool, clear streams cover my meadows. The color of gold dust beetles, these mountains do me please me so. These myrtles peaks, majestic as clouds, appearing like palaces, resounding with the lovely bellows of tusters. These mountains do please me so. To sum it up, arahants have completely developed their sense faculties, bhāvitindriya. Besides being able to immediately savor a delightful environment, they are able to perceive or relate to the unpleasant physical surrounding as pleasant. They delight in pleasant places without hindrance, and they transform chaotic, troublesome places into an oasis. Those who come into contact with them share in this delight. Whether in a village or in a forest, on land or in the dell, whether arahants dwell, delightful indeed is that spot. The cultivation of the body, kāya-bhāvanā, begins with the initial stages of practice and truly reaches fulfillment when practice is complete. When a person realizes the fruit of wisdom cultivation, when practice is complete, the aspect of physical self-mastery, bhāvita-kāya, is conspicuous and easily apparent to others. Having said this, however, there are other similar results of awakening that can potentially be misleading to ordinary people who have not developed themselves in body, developed themselves in virtue, developed themselves in mind, and developed themselves in wisdom.